Cold War began even before the guns fell silent in Germany and in the Pacific in 1945. Suspicion and mistrust had defined the U.S.-Soviet relations for decades had resurfaced as soon as the alliance against Adolf Hitler was no longer necessary. Unable to compromise or find common ground, the world's two remaining superpowers inevitably crashed. Okay. It all started when Communist Russia had a conference at the end of World War II. There, Stalin promised FDR he would allow democratic elections in Eastern Europe. Later in 1945, in a conference called Potsdam Conference, FDR died, so Harry S. Truman became president. Stalin and Truman talked again, and Stalin said that he would not allow the elections he promised earlier to FDR. Tensions grew higher and higher through the decades.
The Cuban Missile Crisis. In October 1962, an American U-2 spy secretly photographed nuclear missile sites being built by the Soviet Union on the island of Cuba. President Kennedy did not want his advisors for several days to discuss the problem. After many long and difficult meetings, Kennedy decided to place a naval blockade or a ring of ships around Cuba. The aim of this quarantine, as he called it, was to prevent the Soviets from bringing in more military supplies. He demanded the removal of the missiles already there and destruction of the sites. On October 22nd, President Kennedy spoke to the nation about the crisis in a televised address. No one was sure how Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev would respond to the naval blockade and U.S. demands, but the leader of both superpowers recognized the devastating possibility of a nuclear war and publicly agreed a deal with the Soviets and dismantle the weapons sites in exchange for a pledge from the United States not to invade Cuba. The Soviets test their first atomic bomb. Like the Americans, the Soviets constructed a tower from which to test their weapons. They assembled this device like an adjacent concrete hall, which had railroad tracks leading down its entire length. The Soviets wanted to learn about the effects of nuclear weapons, so in addition to instruments that would measure the size and shock wave of the intensity and radiation, they constructed weapons and brick houses, bridges, tunnels, and water towers in the vicinity of the tower. They also put caged animals nearby so they could study the effects of nuclear radiation. All the scientists knew that their own personal fates depended on the success of the bomb. One of them later said that if they had failed, they would have all been shot. 2 months later, the scientists principally responded for designing the bomb, won honors for their rules of the project.
Gorbachev is named General Secretary in the Soviet Union, also known as Gordy. He was born in the small village of Krivoloy. At age 10, his dad was drafted into the Soviet Union military. After school, he became a full member of the Communist Party. He got a job at Stavropol Territory with the Komsomol, which is the Soviet youth group. Getting office, Chernenko died in office 13 months after he won against Gordy the first time. Gordy became leader at age 54. Ending arms race, Soviet Union and the United States were in competition with mass production of nuclear weapons. Gordy noticed that the Soviet economy was slowing down, and so he talked to the USA president about ending it. The fall of the Berlin Wall. Physical representation of West Berlin and East Germany, symbolic boundary of communism and democracy. Built on August 13, 1961. Tore down or closed on November 9, 1989. Prevented a majority of people from migrating. 5,000 people made it over by training and escape. East Germany communist leaders thought that they needed change, and the citizens did not agree. On the evening of November 9, 1989, East Germany said boundaries were gone. People were in shock. They had celebrations with kissing, hugging, singing, cheering, and crying.
An American U-2 spy plane was shot down over the Soviet Union. The incident derailed an important summit meeting between President Dwight D. Eisenhower and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. It was scheduled for later that month. The U-2 spy plane was the brainchild of a Central Intelligence Agency and was a sophisticated technological marvel. Traveling altitudes of up to 7,000 feet, the aircraft was equipped with a state-of-the-art photography that could take high-resolution pictures for the headlines in Russia's newspaper as it flew overhead. Flights over the Soviet Union began in mid-1956. The CIA reassured President Eisenhower that the Soviets did not possess anti-aircraft weapons sophisticated enough to shoot down high-altitude planes.